So I think we can all recognize that getting a regulated circadian rhythm is extremely important for our health, not just for helping us to sleep better, but then of course all the other effects that having better sleep will affect, like having lower insulin levels, higher insulin sensitivity, regulated hormones, an ability to stay leaner, things like that. And there's some things that you can do that are quite practical outside of just avoiding blue light at night. Because of course we all know that if you avoid blue light at night, it helps you to create more melatonin and sleep better. But what we need to understand about our circadian rhythm is that there is a circadian rhythm going on. So it's not just about having low levels of our stress hormones and having enough melatonin at nighttime. It's also about allowing our stress hormones like cortisol and our neurotransmitters like adrenaline to be raised at certain times in the day. So what we do want to see with our hormones when it comes to our stress hormones and our neurotransmitters is we want to see our cortisol rise up in the morning, not too high, but we want to see it at a higher level, and then it will peter off throughout the day. And then of course once we get to the evening and we're just about to go to sleep, we want to see our cortisol levels at their baseline, like quite low. And then of course through the night they should stay low. And what's interesting about cortisol and melatonin is that as your cortisol levels are low, your melatonin levels should be higher, and vice versa. When your cortisol levels are high, your melatonin levels are going to be low. And this is what helps us to, when we get that bump up of cortisol in the morning, helps us to get up and go, have motivation, drive, energy. And then as the day goes on, those cortisol levels should drop and your melatonin levels should start to rise up. And this is when we start to feel calmer, relaxed, and ready to be able to fall into a nice deep sleep. So what we do want to do to maximize our circadian rhythm is not only avoid that white light at night and increase our melatonin levels, we want to support our higher levels of cortisol first thing in the morning and our adrenaline and noradrenaline. And there are certain things you can do to do that. So one thing that most people are already doing is caffeine. Now, I'm not saying that everybody should be drinking caffeine. It depends on how you tolerate it, but certainly caffeine is a really nice way of increasing your stress hormones, which aren't always bad, as I just explained. You want them to be rising up in the morning. So by having some caffeine in the morning can help to increase the levels of cortisol, adrenaline, and noradrenaline. And this will help to give us energy first thing in the morning, drive and motivation. What is also interesting on this topic to note as well, and that I'm going to do a separate video on because I don't want to bore you right now, is that if you consume caffeine, actually, if you wait a little bit first thing in the morning, you actually consume it more like 90 to 100 minutes after waking up. This can help with sleep later on in the day, and it's all to do with how caffeine will actually bind up adenosine receptors. Another thing that you want to consider first thing in the morning is getting enough light. So first thing in the morning, the best thing you can do is actually get outside or at least be exposed to some white light. You want to make sure that that light is getting into your eyes and triggering the relevant sensors within our brain to be able to stimulate our brain and help us to then produce enough melatonin later in the day. So another thing you can do to increase your cortisol and your adrenaline in the morning is to listen to a certain type of music that's going to give you energy. So that sort of music is going to be, upbeat. Any music that gives you a little bit of a boost of like adrenaline is going to be really good. I really like to listen to Korn in the morning. Another thing is also to just get straight up. When you wake up first thing in the morning and you're like, okay, it's morning, I've got to get up, bound out of bed, get out of bed. All of this is going to release out more cortisol and help you to just get up and go. Another really cool thing that I like to utilize is training first thing in the morning. And this is good because it's going to release out some of those stress hormones. And again, I just want to remind you that stress hormones aren't always bad because we need them to be able to burn body fat, release energy and things like that, and obviously help with our circadian rhythm. So by getting up and first thing or as soon as you have the available time, get up and do a workout. This is going to release out more of these stress hormones and help them to get you going. I actually really like, if I'm going to do any sprints, I like to do them first thing in the morning. And it's amazing how you get up, you're feeling a little bit like, oh, I can't get going, have a little bit of caffeine, and then do a sprint workout for even just 10 minutes can really just help you to, bam, you're awake and you're ready to go. And then the rest of the stuff that you're doing in the day, you feel much more like your brain is working better, your brain's on fire, and it's just go, 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 because you've released out those hormones. Other things that you can consider first thing in the morning, as well as when you have your first meal or as a supplement, are things like tyrosine. And the reason for that is that tyrosine is a precursor to dopamine, and then the dopamine is a precursor to adrenaline and noradrenaline. And as I said, we want to support those levels first thing in the morning. So potentially, if you're having supplements in the morning or you have your first meal, making sure that it's either rich in things like phenylalanine, which is the precursor to tyrosine, or you could be utilizing a supplement that has tyrosine in it. Interestingly enough, if we have a protein-rich meal in the early hours of the day, or even in the first half of the day, having a little bit more protein is useful, just with its effects with being able to stimulate the release of things like histamines and orexins, and they're all going to stimulate our brain and be more stimulating in the first half of the day. Now, as we get towards the latter half of the day, as I said, we want to see those cortisol levels start to drop down and the adrenaline and noradrenaline to be doing the same thing. So we want to see these levels start to go down towards the end of the day. And so this is where you could be, trying to view afternoon light. Even a sunset is really great to trigger in your brain that, okay, it's afternoon or it's late evening and it's the latter half of the day. All these things help to regulate our circadian rhythm. This is where things like, for example, utilizing, red light in the afternoon, evening, even if you can't view sunsets and things like that, this is where it helps our brain to see that, oh, it's the latter half of the day. What's interesting here as well is utilizing other amino acids. Instead of tyrosine, we could be using amino acids like tryptophan. Why? Because tryptophan is a precursor to serotonin, and serotonin is a precursor to melatonin. And so making sure that we're getting enough tryptophan in the latter half of the day, or at least even throughout our meals throughout the day, getting enough tryptophan in our foods is really useful here, because serotonin, once we've converted the tryptophan into serotonin, it can be stored. And then it's when we are viewing the darkness that we then convert that serotonin to melatonin. Other things that are important to note here as well are the fact that in order to convert tryptophan into serotonin, we require iron. And to convert the serotonin to melatonin, we require B6, B5, and SAMe. So you need to make sure you're getting enough of those from your diet to be able to do that conversion and get enough melatonin. Other really useful supplements can be things like glycine, things like L-theanine, phosphatidylserine, and adaptogens. I would always, if I'm going to utilize these products, as I said before, we don't want to bring down our cortisol all the time. We do want times in the day where it is higher. So I would actually be using, glycine, L-theanine, phosphatidylserine, and adaptogens that will bring down cortisol. I'd want to use them in the latter half of the day. So as I said, just as a recap, you want your cortisol and your adrenaline to be higher up in the morning so that you have drive, motivation, and you get up and go. This helps set up our circadian rhythm, because our bodies need to see the fact that we are exposed to white light and we have higher hormones first thing in the day in order to be able to have them lowered in the latter half of the day and to regulate those hormones as well. So you can be using things like tyrosine, you can be using things like caffeine and protein in the first half of the day to help to increase the levels of those stress hormones in a good way. And then in the latter half of the day, you can be using things like tryptophan, glycine, L-theanine, phosphatidylserine, and adaptogens to help to reduce that cortisol when we need it to be lower. And, if things, if you are really still struggling with your melatonin production after doing all these things, this is where maybe supplementing a little bit of melatonin can be quite useful. What I do want to point out here, though, about melatonin that you do need to be aware of is that, like a lot of different things in the body, a lot of molecules, if you are taking exogenous melatonin, eventually your body will adapt to that and it will reduce receptors. So, over time you can become adapted to taking the melatonin. And then when you stop taking it, your body is not able to produce it like it usually would, or it's producing less. So it's important to not get addicted to using melatonin. Only use it when you really need it.